Wow. So this week, my desk, it's been basically taken over by articles about Gen Z in the workplace. I mean, are they ambitious? Are they entitled? Seems like everyone's got a strong opinion, but nobody really knows.
Yeah, it's the debate that never ends, right?
Yeah,
Every new generation brings something new to the table.
totally. But instead of just adding to the noise, we're doing a deep dive into something you shared with me, Generation Z, navigating the workforce minefield. And what caught my eye was that it's actually written by someone who's Gen Z themselves.
Oh, interesting. So it's like a first-hand account then.
Exactly. They're actually facing a potential job loss and are trying to figure out what went wrong. But here's the thing, they don't just complain, they actually offer solutions to bridge this whole generational gap.
See, I like that. Taking ownership, that's big. Shows a lot of self-awareness. And that's a good quality for any employee, no matter what generation you're from.
Totally agree. So let's jump into some of the challenges the author brings up. One that really made me think was about cheating in college. They're really open about how common it's become with, everything being online now. But what's fascinating is how that spills over into the workplace. How do you actually measure skills if you don't even know how someone got them in the first place?
It's a tough one, for sure. A degree on a resume doesn't carry the same weight it used to. Now, employers really need to figure out how to assess actual skills, like can you do the work and are you making ethical choices, especially in this digital age.
Right, it's like a whole new set of soft skills we need to figure out how to evaluate. Which actually leads perfectly into the author's next point about the lack of practical experience. They talk about how the education system, the traditional one, it often doesn't actually prepare Gen Z for what it's really like to have a job.
Yeah, and this is where the author's own experience of potentially losing their job becomes so valuable. They're very open about how being stuck in that structured learning environment in college, well, it didn't translate to the real world. They just weren't prepared for how fast-paced things are or how to solve problems on their own.
And you know what's funny? So many articles I read praise Gen Z for their problem-solving abilities, but they always focus on tech and innovation. It's almost like being able to use a complex app doesn't necessarily mean you can, say, navigate office politics.
Exactly. And the author even mentions that, how sometimes being so glued to digital communication meant they weren't as good at face-to-face interactions or even just basic professional etiquette. It's true, yeah. It's like they've got the tools to communicate, but maybe not the finesse.
Right. And this is actually where I think the other solutions are really cool. Like they have this idea for career labs, which I love.
Hmm.
Basically, Gen Z can practice things like networking or how to handle conflict, but in this safe environment, like a simulation
Oh,
almost.
that's interesting. Almost like a video game, but for your career. That could be smart, especially since so many of them are into gaming already.
Exactly. And it kind of goes back to their bigger point about needing more hands-on learning in the workplace. They say the traditional ways of training, they just don't really work for a generation that's used to like instant feedback and interactive stuff.
Absolutely. And that's where I think technology could be really helpful. Imagine like VR simulations for work situations or training programs that are actually fun and game-like.
Right, like those life hack videos everyone's always watching, but for your job.
Yeah.
And actually, speaking of, the author also talks about this whole thing with unrealistic expectations, how seeing all those success stories online, everyone being a CEO by 25, it can really mess with how Gen Z sees their own career path.
It's true. It's like this whole instant success myth.
Hmm.
And while it's great to have big goals, you also got to be realistic, right? Like it takes time and a lot of hard work to build a career, and setbacks happen.
Yeah, for sure. And that's probably where mentorship comes in, right? They talk about that a lot.
Totally. They actually suggest different levels of mentorship. So you'd have like senior people for guidance, but then also mentors who are closer to Gen Z's age so they can relate more to what it's like starting out.
Oh, I like that.
And
It's like having a map for your career, but then also a buddy to help you when you inevitably get lost. But it's not just about guidance. They also talk about resilience training, right?
Yes, they actually connect that back to their own experience, how not being resilient enough made it harder to like bounce back from mistakes.
Which makes sense. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, right?
Exactly. And the author even uses this phrase, the coddling effect. They say that while things like safe spaces and trigger warnings, they come from a good place, but maybe they've made some Gen Zers less equipped to handle the challenges of a job, which can sometimes be tough.
It's that whole balance of preparing someone for the real world versus like shielding them from it. And I think the author's saying we need to find a better balance there.
Right. And they think that doing more things to build resilience, both in school and at work, could be the key.
Makes sense, because let's be real, no job is perfect, right? There's always going to be stress. And speaking of stress, I have to say, I was really impressed with how open the author was about mental health.
Yeah, definitely.
Like, they talk about how Gen Z being open about mental health, it's great, but it can also be tough in a workplace that's not used to it.
It's true. It's a really tricky thing to navigate, especially at work,
Hmm.
because there's still so much stigma around it, unfortunately.
For sure. And then, get this, they actually tie it back to technology.
Really.
Yeah, they talk about how maybe technology can be part of the solution to make mental health more normal in the workplace.
Oh, that's an interesting thought. I mean, how so?
Well, they mention all these mental health apps and mindfulness stuff that's online now, and even like AI therapy. It gives people a way to get support, but anonymously.
Huh. That's really interesting. So they're saying that technology, which, let's be honest, some people blame for more mental health issues, could actually be a tool to help.
Exactly. It's kind of like this weird double-edged sword, I guess. Yeah, it's almost like we're going to see this whole new way of dealing with mental health at work, you know?
I hope so. But even without all the tech stuff, just creating a workplace where people feel supported and can talk openly about mental health, that's huge.
Totally. But that means employers have to change their way of thinking.
Right, for sure. It's not just about mental health either. It's about creating a space where people feel like they can bring their whole selves to work, even the tough stuff.
Because trying to pretend everything's okay when it's not, that doesn't really work, does it?
Nope, not at all. And that actually brings us back to the author and how they're trying to fix things with their own job.
Yeah.
They've got this whole 15-point plan. And it's really about taking responsibility, asking for help, and showing they actually want to grow.
And I like how they don't shy away from the hard stuff. Like, they're straight up about needing to own their mistakes, be clear about what's expected of them, even ask for more feedback, which some people are scared to do.
It's true. It's like they took all those criticisms people throw at Gen Z and turned them into like a to-do list for self-improvement. Pretty cool, actually.
Right. And it's not even just about saving their own job anymore. It's like they want to change the whole story about what a Gen Z employee can be.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so relatable, I think. It's about self-awareness, resilience, that whole growth mindset thing. It doesn't matter what generation you're from. Those are important for everyone.
Totally. So it makes you think, right? If this is working for them, could it actually help create better workplaces for everyone? More engaged, more productive, just like healthier all around.
It's a really good question. Maybe instead of focusing on what makes each generation different, we should look at what we all want. To learn, to grow, to find work that actually means something.
And hey, maybe Gen Z, they're the ones to lead the way. They're not afraid to do things differently, and maybe we can all learn something from that. Well, that was a fascinating deep dive. Thanks for sharing this with me. It's definitely given me a lot to think about.